There was this Kenyan cult that some bad stuff happened to say the least. This happened, this is written about by Hemant Mehta on April 26, 2023. I just want to, kind of go through what happened to the people in this Kenyan cult. This is written up by the Friendly Atheist on his Substack. Subscribe to him if you haven't already. He's really good. But let's just take a look through his article where he talks about this Kenyan cult that some bad stuff happened to. By now, you've likely seen the horrific headlines out of Kenya. At least 90 bodies have been found in shallow graves, the result of a Christian cult that told members they would meet Jesus after starving themselves. The body count will likely rise, though there's also a growing list of people who've been rescued, 34 and counting. A manager for Kenya's Red Cross told CNN that 259 people have been reported missing by their families, including 130 children. Wow, man. It's not clear how many of those people might be part of this religious group. Let me put it into context for you, okay? So there's a Kenyan cult. Oh, here's a map showing you, if you're watching and not listening. This map shows you where Kenya is in Africa. Right south of Somalia, north of Tanzania, south of Ethiopia, South Sudan, Eritrea. It's south of all those. South of Yemen. Anyways, let me put it into perspective for you. Jim Jones was a famously communist pastor. His church was about Jesus and communism. That's what he focused on in his teachings. He ran something called the People's Temple. Eventually, he moved his entire People's Temple to a place called Jonestown in South America. Jonestown had, I think at its peak, 1,000 people that lived on the property or something like that. And over the course of months, he slowly but surely worked his membership into drinking Flavor Aid, is actually what it was. Worked them into drinking the Kool-Aid because they loved Jesus and they wanted to go see him or whatever. When the day came, they didn't want to do it. A lot of people were resistant, but he had guards going around with shotguns and stuff and rifles, aiming them at people, forcing them to do it. Babies included in this process with syringes. It was ugly. I think we lost 700 people that day. Let's see, how many was it? It's 706, I think. 900. Okay, for some reason I thought it was 706, but no, it says more than 900. It was 918 individuals, apparently. I don't know where 706 came from. There were people that survived it, surprisingly. They hid in the bushes, they escaped. So anyways, that was 900 people. This was over 100, and there were a total of 260 people involved. Should give you some perspective. Heaven's Gate, I don't know if you've seen any of the videos I've done about them recently. They have a website that's still up and running. Here it is, right here. This is their website. 39 of them, including the leader, checked out that day. 39. It made national headlines. Deeply sad stuff. Every life is valuable. Every single life. Life is the rarest and most precious thing in the universe, in my opinion. And it's been snuffed out. Why? For no reason, really. They claim they're going to see Jesus. So that should give you some context, some perspective. 39 people died in Heaven's Gate. 918 died in Jonestown. This is over 100. This is probably the largest mass event for cults in a long time. In decades, probably. All right, let's keep reading. It says, it's not clear how many of those people might be part of the religious group. Wow. 130 children are missing, 259 people total. 259 people total. And it's not clear how many of those people might be part of the religious group. The victims were all members of the Good News International Church, led by Paul Nthenge. Police began looking into the graves after receiving a tip that the bodies were buried in the eastern part of the country. Mackenzie was arrested by police on April 14th, shouting, "Praise Jesus," as he was escorted away. The televangelist began his church in '03, and he's been a lightning rod for controversy ever since. That's mostly because he has a habit of urging members to disassociate from the rest of the world. To dissociate. Similar to Jehovah's Witnesses, this is exactly what they do. They order their people to not work with the outside world in any way. He's told members to quit school, leave their jobs, stop eating worldly food, refuse medical treatment, and destroy their government documents like IDs and birth certificates. That's not good. They were also told not to speak with people outside the cult if they had any intention of getting to heaven. This is what cults do, okay? This is so ridiculously common. I see it constantly when I talk about cults. Cults never fit into society quite right. There's always some conflict that happens. Jehovah's Witnesses have mastered the art of blending into society seamlessly, but there have been conflicts and still are conflicts with the outside world. So Jehovah's Witnesses have been ordered to pay settlements to people. When they set up their own government, they mishandled CSA cases, child mistreatment cases, as the government officials, as the de facto government officials, and the outside world ordered them to pay a fine for that, pay a restitution, if you will, because they so grossly mishandled everything. Here's another example. Jehovah's Witnesses not fitting into society quite right. They ordered their people not to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, I agree with that decision. Pledge of Allegiance is weird, but Jehovah's Witnesses don't fit into society quite right, and as a result of ordering their people not to say the pledge, back in the 30s, I think it was, they were beaten relentlessly and made fun of in schools, ostracized, treated like a joke. Greg Locke is going through this exact situation right now. He doesn't fit into society quite right. He owns a piece of property where he holds all of his events and everything, except his property is in a residential neighborhood. And his neighbors do not like all the screaming and loud speakers being turned all the way up and all night. And all of the cars driving up and down their roadways and destroying the roads and clogging up traffic and everything. They don't like that. And so what does he say? He says, bring it on. Come and stop me. I'm going to continue doing this whether you like it or not. See, he wants to be a part of society and get as much benefit as he can out of it, but he doesn't want to pay it back. He doesn't want to contribute in his own way. He doesn't want to follow the rules. He wants the police force to pay millions in overtime to help direct traffic. That's a benefit of society that he gets. But he doesn't want to cooperate when it comes to moving his tent, his structure where he holds his services, to a structurally sound location, or getting proper permits for building out drainage ditches and stuff like that. Cults never fit into society quite right. And this is an extremely common step that I see all the time about this Kenyan cult here. He has a habit of urging his members to dissociate from the rest of the world, burn your government IDs, birth certificates, shun worldly food, refuse medical treatment, destroy all this stuff. That's super common. That doesn't surprise me at all. This is very obviously a cult. Like, they wouldn't even had to have checked out the way that they did for me to recognize that they're a cult. In the exact same way that Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult, these guys are a cult. They exhibit the exact same behaviors. People see Jehovah's Witnesses and they're nice to them. They're happy. They're excited. They have a bubbly personality, and they think, those people, they couldn't be in a cult. No way. If the Jehovah's Witness leadership ordered them to check out the way that these people did, they absolutely would, without question. We don't have to wonder when it comes to cults. That's what a cult is about. Forcing people to bend to their will, no matter what. And the ultimate expression of that control is telling them to check out, and they do it. Now, is that what the leader, the Kenyan leader, or Jim Jones in Jonestown, or Doe in Heaven's Gate really wanted? They obviously deeply enjoyed controlling people. That's what it seemed to be all about for them. The ability to control people, body, mind, and soul. That's what they lived for, seemingly. Is that why they ordered their people to do this? Maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if it was just another expression of their control, another aspect of their obsession with controlling the people around them. But I don't know. Let me know what you think. Anyway, let's keep reading this. What makes this whole tragedy even sadder is now Nthenge, which is the pastor, could have been stopped earlier because everyone knew he was trouble. Just last month on March 23rd, he was arraigned in court after allegedly telling parents to starve and suffocate 2 children. He was then released on a $74 bond. Wow, that's crazy. He'd also been arrested in 2019 on separate charges involving the death of children, but once again, he paid the bond and was set free. Both cases are ongoing. In 2017, he was arrested over his anti-education preaching, though that case didn't go anywhere. Yeah, I mean, you can see these signs all over the place, but until something happens, what are you going to do? It's like with Jehovah's Witnesses. Until they order their people to do something psychotic, what are you going to do? They have a civil right to hold their church services and order their people to do anything they want. You can't violate their civil rights because they might do something wrong. That's the problem here. That's the issue with cults. It should raise red flags when you see people being controlled like this. It should make you ask questions. It should point to the fact that these people are on a really, really bad path. But you can't do anything until they give the order. I mean, that's just how our justice system works in the U.S. and apparently how it works in Kenya also. It's not clear if the recent wave of starvation-related deaths began after his release in March or if some of those bodies had been underground even longer. This quotation from a local politician is haunting. Quote, The month of March was set aside for all the children to die. The month of April was set aside for women to die. May was for the men to die. Wow. That was a representative to the county assembly, Samson Zia Kahindi, I think, based on the questioning of a surviving cult member. Disturbing stuff, man. Like I said, life is the most precious thing in the universe, and this is what you get when you deal with cults. It's the ultimate expression of control, which is what distinguishes cults from religions, the level of control. You know, I used to go to a Methodist church with my kid, Alpha 40, and her mom and grandmother and whoever else, that whole side of the family. Used to go to this Methodist church with them. And you know, I never felt pressured into doing something psychotic. I never felt awkward just showing up every now and then. They were perfectly fine with me, all of them. They were totally cool. I never felt like I was being watched or this weird like background feeling that I got with Jehovah's Witnesses, that something was just weird. I never got any of that with this group. I could walk away from it and come back 6 months later and it was fine. If you feel weird not showing up to a group, there's a problem. If you feel weird because you didn't show up to this church and these people start asking you questions about what you were doing and where you were and why you didn't come and blah, 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 it should raise red flags. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons are not ordering their people to check out right now, but they're on that path. And possibly the only reason that they are not doing that, ordering their people to check out, is because they're satisfied, the leadership is, with the level of control they have over people now. Or they worry that they would go to jail if they ordered it or something like that. Nthenge claims he shut the church down in 2019, as if that should absolve him of any connection to these fatalities. There are unverified reports that some members of the group attempted to escape, only to be killed. This is based on the fact that at least one body recovered from a grave appeared to be otherwise healthy and not emaciated. So it sounds like murder, right? Kenya President William Ruto on Monday said the cult leader belongs in prison, as what is being witnessed in Shakahola is akin to terrorism. Oh, absolutely, 100%. For what it's worth, the cult leader ordering people to dissociate from the rest of the world and demonizing the outside world. That is exactly why Russia banned Jehovah's Witnesses from practicing their religion in their country. Not that I think practicing religion is, or banning practicing religion is okay. I think they should be allowed to practice their religion. But that's why they were banned. I mean, they're just not allowed to congregate. They're allowed to believe whatever. They're not allowed to meet and discuss their beliefs in Russia, basically. I have no idea what Mackenzie may have said to convince dozens of people to take their own lives as a precondition to meeting Jesus. This is Hemant Mehta speaking. But I would caution people against treating this story like something that happens over there. Kenya has long fostered religious cults, yes. However, there's nothing strange about a religious leader convincing people to harm their bodies, often in the name of Jesus. Absolutely agreed, 100%. This is not just something that happens over there. President Ruto added that Mackenzie pretends and postures as a pastor when in fact he's a terrible criminal. But the truth is, he can be both. What he allegedly did wasn't unchristian, it was just unorthodox. Interesting. That's from Hemant Mehta. Well, like I said, this is the ultimate expression of control. And, you know, that's what religion likes to do. It likes to control people heavily. Now, there's a varying degree of control. Maybe your pastor isn't the one doing the controlling. Maybe your pastor is just a nice guy and believes it just like you, and it's no big deal. But religion was created as a control mechanism, and naturally there will be people that enter the system with the intent to exploit that fact about the system. They intend to exploit the fact that it's built for control. In the U.S., there are Christians who use prayer as a substitute for medical intervention, faith healing, and children have paid the price for it with their lives. Absolutely agreed. Or Jehovah's Witnesses ordering their people not to take blood transfusions. Thousands have died from it. Thousands. We don't know exactly how many, but we know it's in the thousands minimum because Jehovah's Witnesses used to release names of kids who sacrificed their lives for Jehovah by not getting a blood transfusion. Then they realized how tacky isn't the right word, maybe grotesque that was, and they stopped citing their names in these magazines. Now they'll just simply be forgotten forever. It's disgusting. There are Christians who justify child abuse as an extension of biblical wisdom, training up their kids with a rod lest they be spoiled. There were Christian and Orthodox Jewish leaders during the pandemic who ignored safety precautions and crammed themselves indoors without masks or social distancing. There's no shortage of religious leaders urging members to avoid life-saving vaccines. You could even argue that this applies to pastors who think a preteen victim ought to bear her attacker's baby no matter what it may do to her body. The body count in Kenya is horrific because the numbers are increasing in large batches relatively quickly, but we should be similarly outraged by the slow drip faith-based deaths occurring in the U.S. Like I said, Jehovah's Witnesses order their people not to get blood transfusions, and how many kids die? Not just kids, how many people? My dad was prepared to be one of those casualties when I was younger. He needed a quadruple bypass surgery and refused a blood transfusion. Imagine that. How many doctors are willing to do a quadruple bypass without a blood transfusion? That's crazy. He was almost one of those people. It's way more common than you think. Somebody gets in a car accident and they end up in the hospital. They've lost a lot of blood. They need a transfusion. They're going to die if they don't get one. The idea that a religious leader could convince followers to put their own lives in danger using faith as the brainwashing weapon isn't limited to cults or foreign countries. It happens in our backyard, too. It happens all the time. It's not limited to one religion. It's not limited to well-defined cults, which mix poisonous substances with food or drink rather than starvation. It may even be more pernicious in certain situations because some behaviors, like vaccine denial, put other people in harm's way. And that's before we even get into the Christian nationalists attempting to legislate their archaic beliefs in order to cause maximum damage. If Mackenzie is found guilty of these deaths, he deserves to be punished accordingly. Religious freedom cannot be an excuse for this kind of irreversible damage. But what he appears to have done isn't a stretch from what countless religious leaders do all the time. Using God as leverage to convince gullible followers to make terrible decisions is unfortunately all too familiar. Absolutely agreed on that point. Again, it's about the level of control, and religion as an institution is designed to control others. That's what it's all about. That's the point. Some people in the system don't care. They're not in it to control others. Usually, when you find somebody like that, you've found a decent religion, a decent church you can go to. But it is built for exploitation. You are more likely than not to find an exploitative, controlling church. And when you get into one, whether you realize it's exploitative or not when you get in, like you may not realize for months and months. When you get into one, they'll do everything they can to drain you of every penny you own and control every move you make. That's how it works. That's the nature of it. Anyway, yeah, let me know what you think about that in the comments. This does not surprise me at all. It's just really, really devastatingly sad that people are still willing to do what extremists say like this. These people were true believers. Let me know what you think.